Commander Jake Morrison walked slowly across the bridge of the UES Defiant. His boots made soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. The ship was quiet, except for the low hum of the engines and the beeping of computers. Jake had been in space for 12 years, but today felt different. Today, humanity would meet its first alien race. "Sir, we have contact," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. "Unknown vessel approaching from the asteroid belt. It's big, Commander. Much bigger than our ships." Jake moved to the main screen and watched as a shape appeared in the darkness of space. The alien ship looked like it was made of crystal and metal twisted together. It was beautiful in a way that made Jake feel small. The ship was at least 3 times the size of the Defiant, and it moved with a grace that human ships could never match. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. "Let's see what they want." The screen flickered, and suddenly Jake was looking at something that was definitely not human. The alien had pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Its eyes were large and silver, and its head was shaped like a triangle. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English, though the voice sounded like wind blowing through metal tubes. "I am Captain Veltar of the Valari Empire," the alien said. "You are the species called humans, are you not? We have been watching your small ships move through space. You are new here, and you do not understand how things work in this part of the galaxy." Jake kept his face calm, but his heart was beating fast. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiant. We are exploring this system under the authority of Earth Command. We come in peace." Captain Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace is for the strong, human. Your species is weak and small. You have only a few ships, and they are built from primitive materials. We offer you one chance to surrender. Give us your ships and your technology, and we will allow some of your people to live as workers in our empire." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. He had been trained for this moment. "Captain Veltar, I need to discuss this with my superiors. Can you give us some time?" "You have one of your hours," Veltar said. "After that, we will take what we want by force." The screen went black. Jake turned to his communications officer. "Get me Admiral Clark on Earth Command. Priority channel." The wait seemed to last forever, but finally Admiral Ryan Clark appeared on the screen. Clark was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. "Commander Morrison," Clark said, "we've been monitoring your conversation. How many ships do they have?" 30 vessels, sir," Jake replied. "All larger than ours. Their technology looks advanced." Clark nodded slowly. "Jake, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Humanity has been preparing for this day since we first left. Earth, we knew we would eventually meet hostile aliens, and we have been ready." Jake felt confused. "Sir, we only have 12 ships in this system. Even with our best weapons, 30 alien vessels would destroy us." "That's what they think too," Clark said with a small smile. "Commander, I am authorizing you to implement Mercy Rule Protocol. Do you understand what that means?" Jake's eyes went wide. Every officer in the Earth fleet knew about the Mercy Rule, but most thought it was just a theory. "Sir, are you sure?" "The Mercy Rule is untested in real combat." "It's been tested more than you know," Clark said. "Jake, listen to me carefully. Engage the enemy fleet, but remember the rule. Disable their ships, but leave one vessel completely untouched. That ship must be able to return to their empire and tell the story of what happened here. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir," Jake said, though he wasn't sure how. "Good. And Jake, show them what humanity is capable of, but also show them our restraint. The galaxy needs to learn both lessons." The connection ended, and Jake turned to address his crew. "All hands, this is the commander. We are about to engage a superior alien force. I know some of you are scared. I know all of you are wondering if we can win. I'm here to tell you that we can and we will." He paused and looked around the bridge at the faces of his crew. These were good people, humans who had volunteered to explore the unknown parts of space. They trusted him to bring them home safely. "But we're not just fighting to win," Jake continued. "We're fighting to send a message. Today, the galaxy will learn what it means to face humanity in battle. They will learn that we are not weak and they are not as strong as they think. but they will also learn that humans understand mercy. Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her station. Commander, the alien fleet is moving into attack formation. They're surrounding us. Jake walked to his command chair and sat down. All ships, this is Defiant Actual. Begin Operation Mercy Rule. Remember your training, remember your duty, and remember that today we speak for all of humanity. The first alien ship fired, and space lit up with energy beams that would have cut through normal human vessels like paper. But these were not normal ships. As the enemy weapons struck the Defiant, they simply passed through the hull as if it wasn't there. Phase shields holding, reported Chief Engineer Bobby Martinez. Enemy weapons can't touch us while we're out of phase with normal space. Jake watched as the alien ships fired again and again, their weapons having no effect. He could imagine the confusion and fear on the enemy bridges as their most powerful weapons did nothing at all. Return fire, Jake ordered. Target their weapons and engines only. No damage to life support or crew areas. The human fleet opened fire, and the difference was immediately clear. Where alien weapons had no effect on human ships, human weapons cut through alien shields like they were made of paper. But instead of destroying the enemy vessels, the human beams precisely disabled weapon systems and engines, leaving the ships floating helplessly in space. In less than 10 minutes, 29 alien ships were powerless and defenseless. Only Captain Veltar's flagship remained untouched, exactly as the Mercy Rule required. Jake opened a channel to the alien captain. Veltar's face appeared on the screen, and the proud look from before was gone. The alien looked terrified and confused. Captain, Veltar, Jake said calmly. Your fleet is disabled. Your ships are powerless. Your weapons cannot hurt us, but our weapons can destroy you completely. Do you understand this? Veltar nodded slowly. How is this possible? Your ships are small and primitive. How can you do these things? Because you underestimated us, Jake replied. You thought we were weak because we were new. You thought numbers and size were all that mattered in war. You were wrong. Jake stood up and moved closer to the screen. But here is what you need to understand, Captain. We could destroy all of your ships right now. We could kill every member of your crew and leave no trace that you were ever here. We have that power. Veltar's silver eyes grew even wider. But we choose not to use it, Jake continued. We are letting you live. We are letting your crew live. And we are letting you keep one ship so you can return to your empire and tell them what happened here. Why? Veltar whispered. Why spare us? In war, the victor destroys the defeated. Jake smiled. Because that's not how humans fight war, Captain. We fight to protect what we love, not to destroy what we hate. Your empire needs to learn this lesson. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity offers a choice, peace or consequences. What message should I take back? Veltar asked. Tell them the truth, Jake said. Tell them that humans are not weak, but we are not cruel either. Tell them that we could have killed you all, but we chose mercy instead. And tell them that if they come in peace, they will find friends. But if they come with war, they will find that mercy has limits. The alien captain's ship turned and slowly flew away into the darkness of space, leaving behind the disabled vessels and the human fleet that had shown the galaxy something new. Power, combined with restraint. Strength, tempered by wisdom, and victory seasoned with mercy. 3 months had passed since the Valari incident, and the story had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Captain Veltar had kept his word and told his empire exactly what had happened. But the Valari Empire had not kept the story to themselves. Soon, every spacefaring species knew about the humans and their strange way of fighting. The Galactic Council met on the ancient world of Nexus Prime, a planet that had been neutral ground for over 1,000 years. The Great Assembly Hall was filled with representatives from 47 different species, each more alien than the last. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others crawled on many legs, and some floated in tanks of liquid. But they all had one thing in common. They were all talking about humanity. Counselor Zethvar of the Altarian Federation stood at the center of the hall. He was tall and thin, with skin that changed colors when he was excited or angry. Right now his skin was flashing between red and orange, which meant he was very upset. "Fellow beings," Zethvar announced in a voice that sounded like singing, "we have a problem. A new species has appeared in our galaxy, and they possess technology that we do not understand. Worse, they have used this technology in acts of war, yet they claim to be peaceful." The hall erupted in noise as dozens of species began talking at once. Some were afraid, others were angry, and a few seemed curious. The Krylon delegate, a creature that looked like a walking crystal, spoke first. "The evidence is clear," the Krylon said in a voice like breaking glass. "These humans destroyed an entire Valari fleet in minutes. They have weapons that can pass through any defense we know. They are a threat to every civilized species in the galaxy." "But they did not destroy the fleet," interrupted the Vorthak representative. The Vorthak looked like a giant insect with too many eyes. "They disabled the ships and spared the crews. This is not the behavior of conquerors. It is the behavior of something worse," hissed the Sevek ambassador. The Sevek were reptilian creatures who had fought wars for centuries. "They are playing with us. They want us to think they are merciful, but really they are showing us how helpless we are. It is a form of psychological warfare." Dr. Helen Parker sat quietly in the human section of the hall, watching the debate unfold. She was Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, a job that nobody had wanted until now. Helen was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but she had been chosen for this role because she was one of the smartest people on Earth. Helen had been a professor of alien psychology before First Contact, even though there had been no aliens to study. She had spent years thinking about how different species might communicate and interact. Now all of that theoretical knowledge was being put to the test. "Perhaps we should ask the human representative to explain," suggested Counselor Zethvar. His skin had turned blue, which meant he was being diplomatic. Helen stood up slowly and walked to the center of the hall. She looked small compared to many of the alien representatives, but her voice was strong and clear. "Honorable beings," she began, "I understand your confusion and your fear. What happened at the Valari encounter was indeed unprecedented, but I want you to understand why we acted as we did. Your weapons defy the laws of physics," declared the Zirian representative. The Zirians were a proud warrior race that had conquered many worlds. "Our scientists have studied the battle recordings. Your ships should not be able to do what they did." Helen nodded. "You are right that our technology is different, but that is not the important point. The important point is how we chose to use it." "You could have destroyed them all," said the Thylan ambassador. "The Thylans were a peaceful species that had been conquered by the Valari years ago. Why did you not?" "Because destruction was not our goal," Helen replied. "We did not come to your galaxy to conquer or to destroy. We came to explore and to learn. When we were attacked, we defended ourselves. But we defended ourselves in a way that would teach rather than simply punish." The hall grew quiet as the representatives considered her words. Many of them came from species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. The idea of winning a battle and then showing mercy to the defeated enemy was strange to them. Meanwhile, in a secure room deep beneath the council building, Intelligence Officer Chris Davis was meeting with General Kexthul, the council's military advisor. Chris was a young human who had been sent to gather information about galactic politics and military capabilities. General Kexthul was an old soldier from the Maltaran Empire, a species that looked like armored bears. "Your people have created quite a stir," General Kexthul growled. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "The military commanders of every major power are demanding to know how your weapons work." Chris smiled politely. "I'm afraid that information is classified, General, but I can tell you that our weapons are not meant for conquest. They are meant for defense." "Defense?" The General's 4 eyes focused on Chris with suspicion. "You disabled 30 enemy ships in 10 minutes. That is not defense, that is complete military superiority." "With respect, General, I think you misunderstand what happened," Chris said. "We could have destroyed those ships in 10 seconds, not 10 minutes. We took 10 minutes because we were being careful not to hurt anyone. General Kexthul leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his massive weight. Are you saying your ships could have worked faster? Much faster, Chris confirmed. But speed was not our goal. Precision was. We wanted to disable the enemy fleet without causing any casualties. That requires much more skill and time than simply destroying everything. The general was quiet for a long moment. In all my years of warfare, I have never heard of an army that made war more difficult for itself in order to spare enemy lives. Why would you do such a thing? Chris thought about how to explain human philosophy to an alien warrior. General, on Earth we have a saying, a sword that cuts only when it chooses to is sharper than one that cuts all the time. We believe that true strength comes from knowing when not to use your power. Back in the main hall, the debate was continuing. The Nexar representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature, was speaking about their own encounters with aggressive species. The humans claim to be peaceful, the Nexar said in a voice like bubbling water, but their actions speak of military preparation that must have taken decades. How does a peaceful species develop such advanced weapons? Dr. Parker had been expecting this question, because a truly peaceful species must be prepared to defend peace. On Earth, we learned long ago that the best way to avoid war is to be so well prepared for it that nobody wants to fight you. But you went beyond preparation, insisted the Krylon delegate. You developed weapons that make all of our defenses useless. This creates an imbalance of power that threatens the entire galactic order. Does it? Helen asked. We have had these weapons for months now. In that time, have we attacked anyone? Have we made demands? Have we tried to conquer territory or force anyone to obey us? The hall grew quiet as the representatives realized she was right. Despite having overwhelming military superiority, the humans had made no aggressive moves at all. What do you want from us? Asked Counselor Zethvar. His skin had turned a pale green, which meant he was genuinely curious. We want what any new species wants, Helen replied. We want to trade, to learn, to share knowledge and culture. We want to find our place in this galaxy peacefully. And if others do not want peace? Asked the Sevik ambassador. Helen's expression grew serious. Then they will learn what the Valari learned. We prefer peace, but we are not helpless. We will defend ourselves and our allies, but we will do so in a way that leaves room for wisdom to grow. The Maltaran delegate, a cousin species to General Kexthul, spoke up. You speak of allies. Who are your allies? Anyone who chooses peace over war, Helen said simply. Anyone who believes that strength should be used to protect rather than to conquer. Anyone who thinks the galaxy is big enough for all of us to prosper together. As the session ended, representatives from dozens of species approached Dr. Parker with questions, offers, and requests. Some wanted to establish trade relationships. Others wanted to learn more about human technology. A few wanted to form military alliances. But the most interesting conversation came from Captain Veltar himself, who had been invited to testify about his encounter with the humans. He approached Helen as the hall was emptying. Ambassador Parker, he said in his wind-like voice, I have been thinking about what happened in that battle. My empire has always believed that mercy is weakness, but what your people showed was not weakness. What was it? Helen asked. It was terrifying, Veltar admitted. To know that someone has the power to destroy you completely but chooses not to. It changes how you think about everything. My people are no longer planning to expand into human space. We are reconsidering many of our expansion plans. Helen smiled. That was the point, Captain. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send is the one you choose not to send. As the representatives returned to their ships and their homeworlds, they carried with them a new understanding. The humans were not just another species to be cataloged and categorized. They were something unprecedented, a species that had achieved overwhelming military power and then chosen to use it with restraint. The Zirion hegemony was not impressed by human mercy. Supreme Commander Vexiron sat in his war room aboard the massive battleship Dominator, studying the reports from the Valari encounter for the 100th time. Around him, his top military advisors watched holographic displays showing human ship movements and weapon effects. They are clever, admitted General Korthax, Vexiron's second in command. But cleverness only works once. We have studied their tactics. We know how they fight now. Vexiron nodded slowly. He was a tall, imposing figure with dark red skin and 4 powerful arms. The Xerians had built their empire by conquering weaker species, and they had never met an enemy they could not defeat through superior numbers and firepower. The idea that a small unknown species could challenge their dominance was unacceptable. The humans defeated 30 Valari ships with 12 vessels, Vexiron said in his deep, commanding voice. But they used tricks and deception. They caught the Valari by surprise. We will not be surprised. What are your orders, Supreme Commander? Asked Admiral Zexmoth, the fleet's tactical coordinator. We will test these humans properly, Vexiron declared. Gather 100 of our finest warships. We will attack their colony world of New Austin. If they are truly as powerful as they claim, they will defend it. If they are weak, we will take it. Either way, the galaxy will see that the Xerion hegemony does not bow to anyone. 3 weeks later, the Xerion fleet arrived at the New Austin system. The colony world was small and peaceful, home to about 50,000 human settlers. It had farms, small cities, and a few industrial centers, but no major military installations. To the Xerions, it looked like an easy target. Colonel Pete Williams commanded the defense of New Austin from the bridge of the UES Guardian. He had only 8 ships under his command, but he had been expecting this attack. Earth Command had warned all colony worlds that someone would eventually test human resolve, and New Austin had volunteered to be that test. Sir, we have incoming transmission from the Xerion fleet, reported Lieutenant Lucy Adams, the communications. Officer, put it on screen, Pete ordered. Supreme Commander Vexiron appeared on the main display, his 4 arms crossed over his armored chest. Behind him, Pete could see the bridge of a massive warship filled with alien warriors. I am Supreme Commander Vexiron of the Xerion hegemony, the alien announced. You humans have made claims of power that we find hard to believe. Today, we will test those claims. Surrender your colony world and your people will be allowed to live as workers in our empire. Resist, and you will be destroyed. Pete looked calmly at the alien commander. Supreme Commander, I am Colonel Pete Williams, of the Earth Defense Force. New Austin is under the protection of humanity, and we will not surrender it to you or anyone else. Vexiron's expression showed surprise. He had expected the humans to at least try to negotiate. Colonel Williams, we have 100 warships. You have 8. Do you truly believe you can defeat us? I believe we can stop you, Pete replied, simply. But more importantly, I believe you can learn from what happens next. We offer you the same choice we offered the Valari. Withdraw peacefully or face the consequences of your aggression. The Valari were weak and unprepared. Vexiron sneered. We are neither. Begin the attack. On the surface of New Austin, Mayor Sandra Lopez watched the sky through the windows of the Emergency Command Center. She was a tough woman who had helped build the colony from nothing, and she was not afraid of aliens or anyone else. The colonists had refused evacuation orders, trusting in the same military that had protected the Valari survivors. Can we really win against 100 ships? Asked Deputy Mayor Frank Chen, worry clear in his voice. Sandra smiled grimly. Frank, 3 months ago I wouldn't have believed it either, but I've read the classified reports from the Valari battle. Our military isn't just advanced, it's revolutionary. Those Xerion ships are about to learn what the Valari learned. In space above the planet, the battle began. The Xerion fleet moved in perfect formation, their commanders confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm any human trickery. They had brought their most advanced ships, their best weapons, and their most experienced crews. Captain Tony Blake, commanding the destroyer UES Retribution, watched the enemy formation approach. All ships, this is Retribution Actual. Remember the mercy rule. We disable, we don't destroy. But these aliens asked for a demonstration, so let's give them one they'll never forget. The first Xerion ships opened fire, sending massive energy blasts toward the human vessels. The aliens had studied the Valari encounter and thought they understood human defensive technology. They were wrong. Instead of using phase shields to make their ships intangible, the the humans tried something different. Captain Blake's ship suddenly seemed to split into 5 identical copies of itself, each one moving in a different direction. The Xerion weapons hit empty space as the real retribution appeared behind their formation. "Quantum duplication successful," reported Chief Engineer Dan Murphy. "Enemy targeting systems are completely confused." Lieutenant Commander Grace Mitchell, tactical officer aboard the UES Defender, coordinated the next phase of the attack. Gravity. Well, generators are online. Beginning space-time distortion. Suddenly, 30 Xerion ships found themselves trapped in a bubble of twisted space. They could fire their weapons, but the shots curved back toward their own ships. They could try to move, but their engines pushed them in circles. They were effectively removed from the battle without being harmed. Supreme Commander Vex Iron watched in growing horror as his carefully planned attack fell apart. His ships were being disabled one by one, but not by any weapons he recognized. Some seemed to phase out of reality, others were caught in gravity traps, and a few simply stopped working as their computer systems were somehow turned off from a distance. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his science officer. "Sir, they appear to be manipulating the fundamental forces of physics," came the reply. "Our sensors show distortions in space-time, quantum field fluctuations, and electromagnetic anomalies that should be impossible to create or control." The battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. When it was over, 99 Xerion warships floated helplessly in space, their crews alive but their ships completely disabled. Only Vex Iron's flagship remained untouched, sitting alone among the wreckage of his fleet's pride. Pete Williams opened a channel to the Xerion commander. "Supreme Commander Vex Iron, your fleet is defeated. Your ships are disabled, but your crews are unharmed. You have 1 ship remaining and you are free to leave with it." Vex Iron stared at the human colonel with a mixture of fear and confusion. "How? How did you defeat us so easily?" "We brought our finest ships, our best weapons, our most experienced warriors." "You brought everything except wisdom," Pete replied. "You studied the Valari encounter, but you learned the wrong lessons. You focused on our tactics and our technology, but you ignored our philosophy." "What philosophy?" Vex Iron asked. "The philosophy that says power without restraint is not strength, it's weakness," Pete explained. "You came here expecting to conquer and destroy. We came here prepared to defend and teach. That made all the difference." Captain Blake's voice came over the communication channel. "Supreme Commander, look at your hull sensors. Check your starboard side." Vex Iron did as instructed and his face went pale. Burned into the side of his flagship in perfect Xerion script were the words, "You were spared so that others might learn." "We could have destroyed your ship first," Pete continued. "We could have killed you before you had a chance to give orders. But we wanted you to see what happened to your fleet. We wanted you to understand that your survival was a choice we made, not a failure on our part." "What message am I supposed to take back to the hegemony?" Vex Iron asked quietly. "The same message the Valari took back," Pete said. "That humanity offers peace to those who want it, but we will not be conquered by those who don't. Tell your leaders that we spared you because we believe in the possibility of a better future. Tell them that the galaxy is big enough for all of us, but only if we choose cooperation over conquest." As Vex Iron's ship prepared to leave, he sent one final message to the human fleet. "Colonel Williams, my empire has conquered dozens of species. We have never encountered anything like what we saw today. How did your people become so powerful?" Pete thought for a moment before answering. "We became powerful because we had to, Supreme Commander. On our world, we learned that the greatest threats often come from those who have power, but no wisdom, to use it properly. So we developed both power and wisdom together. We became strong enough to protect what we love, and wise enough to know when not to use that strength." The Xerion flagship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its message back to the hegemony. Within days, the story of the New Austin battle was spreading across the galaxy. Some species were impressed by human military capabilities. Others were frightened by the implications of such advanced technology. But all of them were talking about the strange humans who could destroy their enemies but chose not to. On New Austin, Life returned to normal quickly. The colonists went back to their farms and factories, their children returned to school, and their leaders began planning for the future. But everyone knew that something important had happened. The news of the Xerion defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the great halls of 12 different species, military leaders and political councils met in emergency sessions. The humans had now defeated 2 major fleets with ease, and the galaxy was starting to understand that this new species represented a fundamental shift in the balance of power. On the planet Corveth Prime, the Confluence of Worlds held their most important meeting in 50 years. The Confluence was an alliance of 12 species that had worked together to maintain peace and order in their region of space. They were not conquerors like the Xerians or the Valari, but they were proud and powerful, and they did not like the idea of humans changing the way things worked. Ambassador Kralthox of the Mindari spoke first. The Mindari looked like giant spiders with silver skin, and they were known for their careful planning and strategic thinking. "Fellow beings," Kralthox said in a voice like clicking metal, "we have a problem that will not solve itself. These humans have demonstrated military technology that makes our combined fleets obsolete. More than that," added Representative Yithmar of the Solaran Republic, "the Solarans were energy beings who lived in crystalline bodies, and their voices sounded like singing crystals. They have changed the rules of warfare itself. How do we negotiate with a species that can destroy us but chooses not to? How do we maintain our dignity when we are so clearly outmatched?" The debate went on for hours. Some members wanted to approach the humans peacefully and try to learn from them. Others believed that humanity's mercy was a sign of weakness that could be exploited. But the majority felt that the humans represented a threat to the existing order that had to be tested properly. High Admiral Jexthul of the Valish Empire stood up slowly. The Valish were an ancient species that looked like armored reptiles, and they had been fighting wars for thousands of years. "My friends," he said in a voice like distant thunder, "we are thinking about this wrong. The humans have defeated individual fleets, but they have never faced a proper military alliance. We have 12 species, each with different technologies and tactics. Perhaps what we need is not a larger fleet, but a smarter one." 3 weeks later, 300 ships gathered at the edge of the Neptune system. It was the largest fleet that had ever been assembled for a single battle, with vessels from all 12 confluent species. Each ship was crewed by experienced warriors, and each species brought their own unique weapons and defenses. Captain Steve Thompson stood on the bridge of the UES Vigilant, looking at the massive enemy formation on his tactical display. He had been promoted after the New Austin battle, and now he commanded one of humanity's most advanced warships. Around him, his crew worked quietly and efficiently, preparing for what intelligence suggested might be the most important battle in human history. "Sir, we have 50 ships in our fleet," reported Navigation Officer Julie Adams. "Enemy fleet is confirmed at 300 vessels from 12 different species. They're using a mixed formation that combines long-range bombardment, close combat, fighters, and mobile defense platforms." Steve nodded thoughtfully. The aliens had learned from the previous battles and brought a much more sophisticated attack plan. "They're not making the same mistakes the Xerians and Valari made. This is going to be interesting." Admiral Kate Nelson's voice came over the communication system from the flagship UES Sovereign. "All ships, this is Admiral Nelson. Today we face our greatest test yet. The enemy has studied our previous battles and adapted their tactics accordingly, but they still don't understand the most important thing about humanity. We adapt faster than anyone else." On the surface of Neptune's largest moon, Earth Command had set up a temporary observation post. General Patricia Hayes watched the tactical displays with growing concern. She had been one of the architects of the Mercy Rule doctrine, but she had never expected it to be tested against such overwhelming odds. "Ma'am, do you really think 50 ships can handle 300? Asked Colonel Mark Davis, her aide. General Hayes smiled grimly. "Mark, 6 months ago I would have said no. But I've learned not to underestimate what our people can do when they put their minds to it. The question isn't whether we can win. The question is whether we can win in a way that teaches the right lessons." The battle began when the confluence Fleet opened fire from maximum range. Thousands of energy beams, plasma bolts, and exotic particles filled the space between the two fleets. It was a display of firepower that could have destroyed entire planets, all focused on 50 human ships. But the human vessels were no longer there. Engineer Matt Rogers aboard the UES Defender had been working on a new application of human technology. Instead of making ships intangible or creating duplicates, he had found a way to fold space itself around the fleet. The human ships were still in the same location, but they existed in a pocket of twisted space-time that made them impossible to target. Spatial fold holding steady, Matt reported to Captain Linda Brown. Enemy weapons are hitting the space where we were, not where we are. Excellent, Captain Brown replied. Begin Phase 2 of the operation. Suddenly, the human fleet seemed to be everywhere at once. Ships appeared above the enemy formation, below it, and inside it. But these were not duplicates or illusions. Using principles of quantum mechanics that most species didn't even know existed, the humans had learned to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Navigator Julie Adams, now serving as Fleet Coordination Officer, managed the complex calculations needed to keep 50 ships in quantum superposition while they engaged 300 targets. All ships report successful quantum distribution. We are engaging the enemy from 17 different angles simultaneously. The Confluence commanders watched in growing panic as their carefully planned formation fell apart. Their ships were being attacked from directions that should have been impossible. Weapons fire seemed to come from empty space, and their own shots passed harmlessly through human vessels that flickered in and out of existence. High Admiral Jexthal tried to maintain order among his forces. All ships, focus fire on the human flagship. If we can disable their command vessel, the others might become easier to target. But Admiral Nelson had anticipated this tactic. The UES Sovereign split into 7 quantum copies, each one capable of commanding the fleet independently. The alien computers couldn't determine which one was real, and their concentrated fire scattered uselessly across multiple probability states. "This is impossible," muttered Commander Sekthal of the Drunic Collective. The Drunics were master engineers who had built some of the most advanced ships in the galaxy. "They are violating fundamental laws of physics." "No," replied his science officer. "They are using laws of physics that we didn't know existed. The question is, how did they learn to do this?" The battle lasted 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. One by one, Confluence ships found their weapons disabled, their engines shut down, and their defensive systems neutralized. The humans used a different technique on each ship, as if they were experimenting with various ways to disable enemies without harming them. Some ships were caught in temporal loops that made them repeat the same actions over and over. Others found their computer systems replaced with friendly messages in their own languages. A few simply stopped working as their molecular bonds were temporarily altered to make their hull plating as soft as cloth. When the fighting was over, 299 Confluence ships floated helplessly in space. Their crews were unharmed. Their life support systems were functioning, but their ability to fight was completely gone. Only High Admiral Jexthal's flagship remained operational, sitting alone in the middle of what had once been the most powerful fleet ever assembled. Admiral Nelson opened a communication channel to the alien commander. "High Admiral Jexthal, your Alliance fleet has been defeated. Your ships are disabled, but your crews are safe. You have been left with one operational vessel so that you can return to your worlds and report what happened here." Jexthal looked at the human admiral with a mixture of respect and bewilderment. "Admiral Nelson, I have fought in over 100 battles during my long career. I have seen weapons that could crack planets and defenses that could stop entire fleets. But I have never seen anything like what your people just did. How is this possible?" "It's possible because we think differently about war than you do," Nelson replied. "You brought 300 ships because you wanted to win through superior numbers. We brought 50 ships because we wanted to win through superior understanding." "Understanding of what?" "Understanding of the universe itself," Nelson explained. "Most species develop military technology by building bigger weapons and stronger defenses. We developed our technology by learning how reality actually works at the deepest level. When you understand quantum mechanics, relativity, and dimensional physics well enough, traditional concepts like impossible become meaningless. Lieutenant Commander Grace Mitchell, serving as Admiral Nelson's science advisor, added her own explanation. Hi, Admiral. Your alliance brought together 12 different species with 12 different approaches to warfare. That should have been your greatest strength. But it was actually your weakness because you were still thinking in terms of conventional physics. 1 year had passed since the Great Battle at Neptune, and the galaxy had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime were busier than they had ever been, with representatives from dozens of species working together on new treaties and agreements. Ambassador Helen Parker stood at the podium in the center of the Great Hall, looking out at faces that had become familiar over the past months. Some were still suspicious of humanity, others had become close allies, but all of them were listening with respect that had been earned through action rather than words. Fellow beings, Helen began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We gather today to sign the Human Accords, a treaty that will define how our species interacts with the rest of the galaxy. But before we sign these documents, I want to speak about what has truly changed in our galaxy over the past year. Counselor Zethvar of the Altarian Federation nodded encouragingly. His skin had turned a warm gold color, which meant he was feeling hopeful. Please, Ambassador Parker, share your thoughts. Helen smiled and looked around the chamber. A year ago, most of you saw humanity as either a threat to be eliminated or a mystery to be solved. You brought fleets to test our strength, expecting either to defeat us or to be defeated by us. What you discovered instead was something that none of us expected. What was that? Asked the Thylan representative, leaning forward with interest. You discovered that strength and mercy are not opposites, Helen replied. You learned that the most powerful weapon is sometimes the choice not to use it. You found out that winning a battle can be less important than teaching a lesson. In the back of the chamber, Captain Veltar of the Valari sat with his delegation. He had been promoted to admiral after his encounter with humanity, and he had spent the past year studying human philosophy and military doctrine. Now he stood up to speak. Ambassador Parker speaks the truth, Veltar said in his wind-like voice. Before I met humans, I believed that war was about destroying your enemies as quickly and completely as possible. I thought mercy was weakness, and restraint was foolishness. The humans showed me that I was wrong about everything. How so, Admiral? Asked General Kexthul, the Council's military advisor. They could have killed my entire crew in seconds, Veltar explained. Instead, they spent 10 minutes carefully disabling our ships without harming anyone. They turned a battle that should have ended in death into a lesson that ended in understanding. That is not weakness. That is the highest form of strength. High. Admiral Jexthul of the Confluence stood up next. The old warrior looked tired but wiser than he had a year ago. The humans defeated our alliance of 300 ships with 50 vessels. But more importantly, they defeated our way of thinking about warfare itself. We came to prove that numbers and firepower were supreme. They proved that wisdom and restraint are more powerful than any weapon. Dr. Helen Parker nodded to both admirals. The battles we fought were never really about military victory. They were about showing the galaxy that there was a different way to think about power and conflict. We could have conquered you all. We could have demanded tribute, claimed territory, and forced you to obey our will. Instead, we chose to offer you partnership. But why? Asked the Zerian representative. Supreme Commander Vexiron had been replaced after his defeat at New Austin, but his successor seemed genuinely curious about human motivations. Your species clearly has the power to rule the galaxy. Why do you choose not to use that power? Helen thought for a moment before answering. Because ruling through fear is not really ruling at all. It's just temporary control that lasts only as long as the fear remains. But ruling through respect, through earned trust, through demonstrated wisdom, that creates something lasting and beneficial for everyone. On Earth, Admiral Ryan Clark sat in his office at the Galactic Relations Command, watching the Council proceedings on his screen. Around him, his staff was monitoring communications from across the galaxy as the Human Accords were being discussed and debated on hundreds of worlds. Sir, said Intelligence Officer Chris Davis. "We're receiving requests from 47 different species asking to establish formal diplomatic relations. 23 want to set up trade agreements. 15 are asking for military cooperation treaties." Admiral Clark smiled. "And how many are asking us to solve their territorial disputes?" 31, sir," Chris replied. "They seem to think that humanity can mediate conflicts that have been going on for centuries." "Maybe we can," Clark said thoughtfully. "The mercy. Rule has changed how people think about conflict resolution. If we can show them that winning doesn't have to mean destroying your opponent, maybe we can help them find solutions that work for everyone." Back on Nexus Prime, the formal signing ceremony was beginning. Representative after representative came forward to sign the Human Accords, a document that recognized humanity's right to exist as a sovereign species while acknowledging their unique role in galactic affairs. But the most significant moment came when Captain Veltar approached the podium with a special announcement. "Fellow beings," the Valari captain said, "my empire has made a decision that our ancestors would have thought impossible. We are disbanding our conquest fleets and converting our warships to exploration and research vessels. The humans have shown us that there are better ways to grow strong than by making others weak." A murmur of surprise ran through the chamber. The Valari had been expanding their empire for over 200 years, and the idea of them giving up conquest was almost unthinkable. "Furthermore," Veltar continued, "we are establishing the Mercy Institute on our homeworld of Valara Prime. We want to study human philosophy and military doctrine, not to copy their weapons, but to learn their wisdom." Admiral Ryan Clark appeared on the main screen, speaking from Earth. "The Mercy Institute will be jointly run by human and Valari educators. But more than that, it will be open to students from any species that wants to learn about alternatives to traditional warfare." Dr. Helen Parker stepped forward again. "The Institute represents something new in galactic history. It's a place where former enemies can come together to study how to turn conflict into cooperation, how to transform strength into service, and how to use power to protect rather than to conquer." Within hours of the announcement, applications began pouring in from across the galaxy. Military officers, political leaders, and ordinary citizens wanted to learn about the philosophy that had changed the nature of interstellar relations. 6 months later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Human Peacekeeping Fleet headquarters, watching ships from dozens of different species working together on joint missions. He had been promoted to lead the new fleet after the success of the Mercy Rule doctrine. "Sir," said his aide, Lieutenant Sarah Brown, "we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. 2 species are threatening war over a disputed system." Jake nodded. "Send the mediation team, and make sure we have a mixed crew, humans, Valari, and Confluence representatives. Let's show them that former enemies can work together to solve problems." "Yes, sir. And Admiral, the waiting list for—" "The Mercy Institute just hit 10,000 applicants. We're going to need more facilities." Jake smiled. "Then we'll build more facilities. The galaxy is finally learning that there are better ways to resolve conflicts than destroying each other. We need to support that learning in every way we can." Meanwhile, on a distant world in the Andromeda sector, 2 species that had been at war for 50 years sat down at a negotiating table for the first time. The mediator was a human diplomat who had graduated from the Mercy Institute, but the real power in the room came from a simple question that had become famous throughout the galaxy. What would happen if we chose to be stronger through mercy rather than weaker through hatred? The war ended 3 days later with a treaty that benefited both sides. Dr. Helen Parker, now Director of Galactic Cultural Exchange, often reflected on how much had changed since that first encounter with the Valari. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, but they had transformed it. They had not imposed their will on other species, but they had offered them new ways of thinking about old problems. The final entry in her personal journal read, "We came to the stars as explorers, and we could have become conquerors. Instead, we chose to become teachers. We showed the galaxy that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to preserve. We proved that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies, but turning them into friends." the Kyo. Mercy rule was never really about military tactics. It was about showing the universe that there was a better way to use power. We spared our enemies so that they could learn from us. But in the end, we learned just as much from them. The galaxy is not a place of endless conflict anymore. It's a place where different species work together, where strength is used to protect the weak, and where the greatest honor comes not from conquest, but from the choice to show mercy when you have the power to show none. History will remember humanity not for the worlds we conquered, but for the enemies we spared. Not for the battles we won, but for the wars we prevented. Not for the fear we inspired, but for the hope we created. We wanted the galaxy to remember us, and it will.